Coburnite grassroots campaign group Momentum has hit out at former Tory MP Christian Wakeford's defection to the Labour Party. Momentum said Christian Wakeford, the Red Wall MP for Bury South, should be nowhere near the Labour Party and called for him to be booted out by Sir Keir Starmer. BBC Newsnight policy editor Lewis Goodall tweeted, "Momentum on Wakeford defection. He should be nowhere near the Labour Party, and the decision by Starmer to accept him is an insult to the millions of working people who want to see a fairer country. Wakeford should be booted out of Labour and a by-election called immediately." Momentum said Mr. Wakeford had consistently voted against progressive policies. Tweeted, "Christian Wakeford should not be in the Labour Party at Keir Starmer. Consistently voted against measures to prevent climate change. Consistently voted against measures to reduce tax avoidance. Consistently voted for a stricter asylum system." The list goes on. Labour cannot be the party of change at the next election, and welcome a Tory MP to their benches who has consistently voted against progressive policies and consistently with a disastrous Tory government. "We need better than this," it added. Christian Wakeford was elected as a Tory MP in 2019. Since then he has consistently used his power to actively make the lives of working people harder. "A man with his politics has no place in the Labour Party." Red Labour also tweeted, "Wrong on so many levels and should not be welcomed at all. The hypocrisy and double standards is rank and it's insulting to those who want the Tories out." At Jeremy Corbyn stands for all of what are supposed to be at UK Labour values and he's not welcome, yet Tories are. Restore the whip. Director at Fair Rights and Free Unions Ben Sellers added, "This is precisely the sort of thing makes people so cynical about establishment party politics, that you can cross the floor, just like that, like a football player swapping one team for another." Meanwhile, the MP for Islington North patiently waits for some natural justice. Mr. Wakeford, who has a majority of just 402, announced minutes before the Prime Minister arrived in the Commons that he had defected to Labour, accusing Boris Johnson of being incapable of offering the leadership and government this country deserves following the Partygate scandal. He said the country needs a government that upholds the highest standards of integrity and probity, but told Mr. Johnson both you and the Conservative Party as a whole have shown themselves incapable of offering the leadership and government this country deserves. His move was announced just minutes before a session of Prime Minister's questions, with the timing calculated to cause maximum damage to Mr. Johnson. Mr. Wakeford won Bury South, which had elected a Labour MP at every election since 1997. In 2019, he announced his decision in the Bury Times and sent a letter to Mr. Johnson explaining why he had lost patience with his leadership. Mr. Wakeford said, "I care passionately about the people of Bury South and I have concluded that the policies of the Conservative government that you led are doing nothing to help the people of my constituency and indeed are only making the struggles they face on a daily basis worse. Britain needs a government focused on tackling the cost of living crisis and providing a path out of the pandemic that protects living standards and defends the security of all. It needs a government that upholds the highest standards of integrity and probity in public life, and sadly both you and the Conservative Party as a whole have shown themselves incapable of offering the leadership and government this country deserves." Meanwhile, Labour brushed off calls for a by-election. A spokesman indicated the party's leader believes there will be no need to hold a by-election in Bury South following Mr. Wakeford's defection. Asked if, as far as Sir Keir Starmer is concerned, there is no principle requiring anyone who defects from one party to another to stand for re-election, the spokesman said, "Correct. On whether Mr. Wakeford will face a trigger ballot in the coming months, the spokesman said, we'll set out all of the process, obviously, once we've had a chance to speak to people, the relevant people that vote in the local party and nationally, and we'll happily set out the process at that point. But I don't want to preempt that now." Mr. Wakeford had been one of 7 Tory MPs to publicly call for Mr. Johnson to quit. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said, "I would like to welcome Christian Wakeford to the Labour Party. He has always put the people of Bury South first." He added, "People across Britain face a cost of living crisis, but this incompetent Tory government is asleep at the wheel, distracted by a chaos of its own making. Meanwhile families, businesses and pensioners are suffering from the Conservative failure to tackle rising food, fuel and energy prices." Sir Keir began Prime Minister's questions by warmly welcoming Mr. Wakeford to his new party. A Labour spokesman said the party had been in talks with the MP for some time. Asked if he could be more precise, the spokesman added, "A while." He said the contact predated the Downing Street party allegations. The spokesman said, as he says in his letter today, there are a number of issues that he's highlighted in his letter, whether it's the cost of living crisis or the government's failure on levelling up, that have led him to this decision. It's a decision that he's been thinking about for some time. He added that Sir Keir had met with Mr. Wakeford personally on Monday evening.